The Galactic Council had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. They controlled 1,000 worlds across 100 star systems. No species had ever challenged them. No planet had ever survived their anger. They were gods among the cosmos, and they knew it. So when the Veth Empire brought a proposal to the Great Crystal Hall, nobody thought twice about it. The Veth had found a small blue planet in an unremarkable corner of the galaxy. The creatures there called it Earth. They were primitive beings who still burned dead plants for energy and fought wars among themselves over invisible lines in the dirt. "They have resources," the Veth ambassador said. "Metals, water, and the creatures themselves could serve as labor." The council voted. It was unanimous. Earth would fall like every other world before it. Now Admiral Ron of the Veth Empire was given 40 warships and simple orders. Go to Earth, break their cities, take their resources, make them kneel. He expected it would take 3 days. Park J woke up that Tuesday morning like any other day. He kissed his wife Yuna goodbye at the door of their small apartment in Seoul. Their daughter Mira was already at school, probably causing trouble for her teachers like she always did. She was only 8 years old, but had the fire of someone much older. "Come home safe," Yuna said, like she always did. "Always," Jay replied, like he always did. He drove to the airbase and suited up for training exercises. He had been a fighter pilot for 12 years. He loved flying more than anything except his family. The sky was his second home. At exactly 9:47 in the morning, the sky turned red. Jay was in his cockpit, running through pre-flight checks, when the first alien ship broke through the clouds above Seoul. It was massive, bigger than any aircraft carrier, shaped like a black dagger pointed at the heart of the city. Behind it came more ships, then more. The sky filled with shadows. The base alarm screamed. Pilots ran to their aircraft. Officers shouted orders that nobody could hear over the chaos. Then the ships opened fire. Jay watched through his cockpit window as beams of blue light struck the city. Buildings exploded. Entire blocks vanished in walls of fire and dust. He thought of Yuna in their apartment. He thought of Mira at her school near the river. Something cold and heavy settled in his chest. He finished his pre-flight checks. His hands did not shake. His breathing stayed steady. And he had trained for enemy attacks his whole career. This enemy came from the stars instead of across a border, but an enemy was an enemy. "Tower, this is Park J requesting immediate takeoff." "Jay, we have no orders yet. Command is not responding. We don't know what—" "I don't need orders. I need the sky." He pushed the throttle forward. His fighter screamed down the runway and leaped into the burning air. Around the world, the same scene played out. Ships appeared over Tokyo, New York, London, Mumbai, and a dozen other cities. They struck without warning, without communication, without mercy. In the first hour, 30 million people died. Governments tried to respond. Missiles were launched at the invading ships. They did nothing. The aliens had shields that turned rockets into harmless sparks. Jets scrambled to meet the threat. But their weapons were useless against technology thousands of years more advanced. Admiral Ron watched from his flagship with mild interest. This was always the same. The primitives would fight for a few hours, realize they could not win, and then surrender. His soldiers would land, establish control, and begin the harvest. It was routine, but something strange happened over Seoul. One of his destroyers reported a single enemy aircraft approaching, a tiny thing made of metal and primitive engines. The weapons officer laughed and prepared to swat it from the sky. The aircraft did not flee. It flew straight at them, firing its small guns. The bullets bounced off the shields like rain off a window. "It's still coming," the weapons officer reported, confusion in his voice. The aircraft released its missiles, and they exploded against the shields. Still, the tiny craft came, getting closer and closer. "Why doesn't it run?" someone asked. Park J could see the alien ship clearly now. It was enormous, hanging in the smoke-filled sky like a mountain. His weapons had done nothing. His missiles were gone. His guns were empty, but he still had his aircraft. He thought of Yuna. He thought of Mira. He thought of every person below him, running and screaming and dying. He opened his radio to broadcast on all frequencies. "My name is Park Jae. I am a pilot of the Republic of Korea. Tell my daughter her father loved her. Tell the world we don't kneel." He pushed the throttle to maximum and aimed his fighter at the bridge of the alien destroyer. The Veth crew had 3 seconds to understand what was happening. For 3 seconds to realize that this primitive creature was going to crash directly into them on purpose. 3 seconds to feel something they had not felt in generations: fear. The impact tore through the destroyer's bridge. Systems failed. Fires erupted. 300 Veth crew members died in an instant. The great ship listed and began to fall from the sky, crashing into the mountains outside the city. Admiral Ron received the report in silence. 1 human, 1 tiny aircraft, 1 destroyed warship. "Sir," his officer said quietly, "sensors are showing similar behavior across the planet. Their aircraft they're ramming our ships. Their ground forces are attacking our landing parties with hand weapons. They're dying by the thousands, but they won't stop." Ron stared at the burning planet below him. And this was not in any of his war plans. This was not rational. You don't fight when you cannot win. Every species in the galaxy knew this basic truth. Every species except these humans, apparently. In Seoul, in the rubble of what used to be a school, a little girl named Park Mira was pulled from the wreckage by rescue workers. She was alive. She was not crying. "My father is a pilot," she told them. "He's fighting them right now." She looked up at the smoke-filled sky with eyes that were older than her 8 years. "And someday," she said, "I will fight them too." The council expected surrender within hours. They had seen it 100 times before. A species would fight, realize they could not win, and then beg for mercy. It was the natural order of things. The strong ruled, the weak submitted. But hours passed, then days. No surrender came. Admiral Ron paced the bridge of his flagship, reading report after report. His ground forces had landed in 12 major cities around the planet. 7 units had stopped responding entirely. The others reported constant attacks from the native population. "They are not soldiers," one ground commander reported, his voice tight with frustration. "They are civilians, teachers, children, old men. They attack us with knives, with rocks, with fire. We kill 10, and 20 more appear." This made no sense to Ron. These humans had no chance of victory. Their weapons could barely scratch Veth armor. Their numbers were meaningless against superior firepower. A rational species would have surrendered by now, but the humans were not rational. And Ron was beginning to understand that this made them very, very dangerous. In the ruins of Busan, a woman named Hana led her people through the broken streets. Before the invasion, she had been a middle school teacher. She taught history and literature. She had never held a weapon in her life. Now she carried a rifle taken from a dead soldier and knew how to use it. Her group numbered 37. There was old Mr. Day, a fisherman who had lived by the sea for 60 years. He carried a harpoon gun and had already killed 4 alien soldiers with it. There was young Tae, only 16, who could run faster than anyone and served as their messenger. There was Dr. Bora, who had been a surgeon before her hospital was destroyed, now treating wounds in basement shelters with whatever supplies she could find. They were not soldiers. They were ordinary people who had chosen not to surrender. The patrol passes this street every 2 hours," Hana told her group, drawing lines in the dust of the floor. "They have 6 soldiers, heavy armor, energy weapons." "We cannot beat them in a straight fight," Mr. Day said calmly. "No," Hana agreed. "So we don't fight straight." They had learned quickly in the first week. The aliens were stronger, better armed, and better protected. But they were also predictable. They followed patterns. They trusted their technology. They did not expect a trap from creatures they considered primitive. That night, Hana's group set their trap. They collapsed a building onto the patrol route, forcing the aliens to slow down and pick their way through the rubble. Tay ran past them, shouting insults, drawing their attention. When the soldiers chased him, they walked directly into the crossfire from windows on both sides of the street. The first volley did little damage. Veth armor was too strong for human bullets, but the armor had gaps, joints where the plates connected. Hana had studied a dead soldier's body for hours to find those weak points. "Aim for the neck!" she shouted. "The knees! The joints!" Mr. Day's harpoon struck a soldier directly in the throat gap. The alien fell without a sound. Dr. Bora, who had sworn an oath to do no harm, threw a bottle filled with gasoline and fire. Flames spread across two soldiers, finding the gaps in their armor. The fight lasted 4 minutes. When it was over, 6 Veth soldiers lay dead in the street. Hana's group had lost 2 people. She would remember their names forever. "Collect the weapons," she ordered. Her voice steady despite the grief burning in her chest. "We move in 10 minutes." This scene repeated across the planet. In the mountains of Switzerland, farmers used avalanches to bury alien vehicles. In the jungles of Vietnam, old soldiers who remembered past wars taught young people how to build traps. In the deserts of Africa, nomads used their knowledge of the land to strike and vanish like ghosts. The humans learned fast. Every dead alien taught them something new. Every captured weapon was studied, copied, improved. Every defeat only made them angrier. Admiral Ron requested reinforcements. The Council denied him. 40 ships should be more than enough for one primitive planet, they replied. "Stop embarrassing the Empire." Ron wanted to scream at them. They did not understand. These creatures were different, and they did not surrender when beaten. They did not beg when dying. They laughed and cursed and kept fighting with their bare hands if they had to. In his quarters that night, Ron watched a captured video from a ground unit. A human female, barely adult by their standards, had charged a Veth soldier with nothing but a kitchen knife. She had been shot 3 times. She kept crawling forward until she died. "What are these things?" Ron whispered to the empty room. He was starting to realize a terrible truth. His species had conquered worlds for thousands of years, but they had never faced anything like humanity. Other species fought until they saw they could not win, then accepted defeat. These humans seemed to believe that death was better than surrender. In Busan, Hana gathered her people in an underground shelter, and their numbers had grown to 53 now. More joined every day. "They think they broke us," she said, looking at their tired, dirty, determined faces. "They think we will give up because we cannot win." She held up a captured alien energy pistol, still sticky with its previous owner's blood. "But we are winning. Every day they stay here, they lose soldiers. Every week, we learn more about them. Every month, we grow stronger while they grow weaker." Mr. Day nodded slowly. "The sea does not fight the rock with strength. It fights with time, patience. Eventually, the sea wins." "Eventually," Hana agreed, "we will win. But for now, we survive. We resist. We make them pay for every single block of every single city." Outside, alien ships patrolled the burning sky. Their weapons could level mountains, and their soldiers could march through walls. But somewhere in those ships, officers were writing nervous reports. Their soldiers were checking shadows. Their commanders were losing sleep. The primitives were not surrendering. And slowly, terribly, the Veth were learning to be afraid. The council met in their great crystal hall, and for the first time in living memory, there was fear in the room. 6 months had passed since the invasion began. Admiral Ron had been ordered to provide a simple update. Instead, he had sent a full report that filled 300 pages. Every page was worse than the last. "We have lost 8,000 soldiers," Elder Mora of the Sylph delegation read aloud. Her voice trembled. 8,000. On a primitive world with no fleet, no shields, no technology. Keeper Illo, the council's military historian, he studied the report with growing dread. He had spent his life analyzing wars. He had never seen anything like this. The humans refused to follow the rules of war, he said slowly. They attack supply lines, they poison water sources, they use their own dead to hide explosives. Women and children serve as soldiers. Elderly citizens fight with tools from their kitchens. This is madness, another delegate said. No rational species behaves this way. You are correct, Illo replied. They are not rational. They are something else entirely. He activated a holographic display. The room filled with recordings from the planet's surface. They showed humans attacking tanks with homemade bombs. They showed farmers driving tractors filled with explosives into alien formations. They showed a recording of Park Jae's final transmission, then his calm voice saying words that haunted every Veth officer who heard them. Tell my daughter her father loved her. Tell the world we don't kneel. They believe in something, Illo said. Something stronger than survival. They call it many names. Honor, freedom, dignity. We do not have words for these concepts in our language. The council sat in uncomfortable silence. They had built their empire on a simple truth. Every species will eventually submit to greater power. The strong rule. The weak obey. This was the natural order. But Earth was breaking that truth into pieces. On the planet below, something remarkable was happening. Humans were changing. General Su stood in a bunker deep beneath the mountains of Korea. Around him sat military leaders from 12 different nations. 6 months ago, they had been rivals or even enemies. The Korea and Japan had centuries of bad history. India and Pakistan had nearly destroyed each other with nuclear weapons. America and Russia had spent decades threatening war. Now they sat together, planning together, fighting together. The aliens don't understand borders, General Su said. They attack us all the same, so we must defend together the same way. A Russian general named Victor nodded. My country has factories in the Ural Mountains, still intact. We can produce weapons. Japan has electronics expertise, added General Tanaka. We can study their technology, find weaknesses. My people know the jungle, said General Adaora from Nigeria. We will teach everyone how to fight without being seen. For the first time in human history, every nation on Earth was working toward the same goal. Old hatreds were forgotten. The ancient grudges were set aside. The invasion had done what thousands of years of philosophy and diplomacy had failed to do. It had united humanity. In Busan, Hana received a message from the Unified Command. Supplies were coming from South America, training materials from Israel, medical equipment from Germany. Every human being on the planet was now part of the same army. We're not alone anymore, she told her people. We never were. Mr. Day smiled for the first time since the invasion began. An enemy that attacks everyone makes enemies of everyone. The aliens are learning this the hard way. Back on the Council flagship, Admiral Ron faced a difficult choice. His fleet was running low on supplies. His soldiers were exhausted and demoralized. Every day, more of them died in attacks they never saw coming. He could call for retreat. The Council would be furious, but his remaining forces would survive. It was the logical choice, the rational choice, but something kept him at Earth. It was not pride or duty. It was curiosity. These creatures fascinated him in a terrible way. He needed to understand them. Sir, his communications officer reported, we've intercepted a human broadcast. It appears to be some kind of speech. Ron watched the recording. A human female stood in front of a crowd of thousands. She was young, with short dark hair and fierce eyes. She spoke in a language Ron's translator struggled with, but the meaning came through. They came to take our world. They came to make us slaves. They thought we would break because we are small, because we are young, because we fight among ourselves. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. But they made a mistake. They gave us something we never had before. A common enemy, a common cause, a common future. She raised her fist to the sky. We are not Korean or American or Russian or Chinese anymore. We are human, and humans do not kneel. The crowd erupted, thousands of voices shouting as one. Ron turned off the display. His hands were cold. "Sir?" his officer asked. "Your orders?" Ron stared out at the blue planet below. Fire still burned across its surface. His ship still controlled the sky. By every measure, the Veth were winning. But Ron knew the truth. The humans were not getting weaker with every passing day. They were getting stronger, more organized, more united, more dangerous. He thought about his report to the council. He thought about the 8,000 soldiers already dead. He thought about the young female with fierce eyes, telling her people they would never kneel. "We are not fighting a planet," he said softly. "We are fighting a species that does not know how to surrender. And I am beginning to think—" He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. In the crystal halls of the council, Elder Mora read the final line of Ron's report. Her blood turned to ice. "If we do not reinforce immediately," Ron had written, "I believe we will lose this war. Not because they are stronger than us, but because they want victory more than they want to live. And I do not know how to fight that." The council stared at those words. Nobody spoke. Something was awakening on that small blue planet, something the galaxy had never seen before. And for the first time in 12,000 years, the council was afraid. The alien patrol ship crashed in the mountains of Gangwon Province on a cold winter night. It hit the side of a cliff and tumbled into a valley where the snow was thick and the trees were dense. Nobody saw it fall except for a few farmers who watched the streak of fire cross the sky. By morning, Korean soldiers had secured the site. By afternoon, scientists from 12 countries were on their way. Dr. Yoon arrived 3 days later. She was a physics professor who had spent her entire career studying theoretical propulsion systems. She had written papers about faster-than-light travel that her colleagues called impossible. She had dreamed of engines that could cross the galaxy in days instead of centuries. Now she stood in front of an actual alien spacecraft, and her hands would not stop shaking. "The pilot is dead," a soldier told her. "Impact killed it. But the ship is mostly intact." Eun walked around the craft slowly. It was beautiful in a terrible way. The hull was made of some metal she did not recognize. The engines hummed with energy she could not explain. Every part of it represented technology thousands of years ahead of anything on Earth. "Can we understand it?" General Su asked. He had flown in personally to oversee the operation. Yoon touched the cold metal of the hull. Her mind was already racing through calculations, theories, possibilities. "Give me time," she said. "I will understand it, and then I will make it better." She spent 2 weeks inside that crashed ship. She barely ate. She barely slept. She filled notebook after notebook with equations and diagrams. Other scientists joined her, and experts from every field, all working together in ways that had never happened before. The alien technology was advanced, but it followed rules. Physics was physics, even for species from distant stars. Once Yoon understood the principles, she could reverse engineer everything else. "Their engines create a fold in space," she explained to the Unified Military Council 6 weeks later. "They bend the universe around themselves and slip through the fold. It is elegant, efficient, safe." "Safe?" General Su asked. Yoon smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. The aliens designed their engines to be stable, predictable. They minimized risk at every step. She pulled up her own diagrams on the display. "Humans think differently. We ask questions the aliens never considered. What if we made it unstable? What if we traded safety for power?" She showed them the plans for her new engine. It was based on alien technology but twisted into something new, something dangerous, something that would either work perfectly or explode violently. "If we succeed," she said, "these engines will be 3 times faster than anything the Veth have. If we fail, the explosion will level a city." The room was silent. "How many people volunteered to test it?" General Sue finally asked. Yoon's smile grew wider. "I had to turn away thousands." The humans built their counterstrike in secret. Factories that had survived the invasion were converted to produce spacecraft. Engineers worked around the clock, combining alien technology with human innovation. Pilots trained in simulators built from captured equipment. They called the project Sunrise, and Commander Hana was one of the first to volunteer. She had spent 10 months fighting on the ground, leading her resistance cell through countless battles. She had watched friends die. She had killed more enemies than she could count. She was tired of hiding in shadows. "I want to take the fight to them," she told General Sue. "I want them to see us coming." Old Mr. Day came to see her off. He was too old for space combat, but he had trained half the pilots who would fly in the attack. His harpoon gun hung on the wall of his quarters, retired but not forgotten. "Come back," he told Hana. "I will," she promised. On the first anniversary of the invasion, exactly 1 year after alien ships had appeared in the sky, the Sunrise fleet launched. 52 ships rose from hidden bunkers across the planet. They were ugly things, built from scraps and wreckage and desperate hope. Their engines glowed with unstable energy. Their weapons were crude copies of alien designs. 14 ships exploded before reaching orbit. Their crews died instantly, knowing the risks they had taken. The other 38 broke through the atmosphere and into space. Admiral Ron had expected many things from the humans. Guerrilla attacks, yes. Sabotage and terrorism, certainly. But he had never expected them to build a fleet. "Impossible," he whispered, as alarms screamed across his flagship. "They don't have the technology. They don't have the knowledge." But the humans had something the Veth had forgotten about. They had the ability to learn, to adapt, to take someone else's creation and make it their own. The first human ship crashed directly into a Veth destroyer, with its unstable engine detonating on impact. The explosion vaporized both ships and damaged 3 others nearby. It was a suicide attack, just like Park J's 1 year ago, but on a scale the aliens could not ignore. The other human ships did not crash. They fought. Commander Hana led a squadron of 12 against the flagship itself. Her weapons were weaker than the enemy's. Her shields were thinner. Her ship was held together with prayers and determination. But she was faster, and she was angry. "For everyone they killed," she said into her radio. "For every city they burned, for every child who lost their parents, make them pay." Her squadron tore through the Veth defensive formation. They struck at weak points that human scientists had identified. They used tactics the aliens had never seen, combining ground warfare thinking with space combat. Admiral Ron sent his final transmission as human missiles struck his bridge. "They're coming for us," he said. "The primitives are in space. Send everything. Send—" Static. On Earth, survivors watched the night sky. Explosions bloomed among the stars like deadly flowers. Human ships fell burning through the atmosphere. Alien ships fell too. In Busan, Mr. Day stood on a rooftop with a bottle of old wine he had been saving. He watched a massive Veth cruiser break apart and crash into the sea. "The sea always wins," he whispered, raising his bottle to the sky. Of the 38 human ships that reached space, 11 survived. Commander Hana was among them. Her ship was barely functional, leaking air and losing power, but she was alive. The Veth blockade was broken. Earth was free. But Hana knew this was only the beginning. The aliens would return with more ships, more soldiers, more weapons. This victory was temporary. Unless humanity did something the Council never expected, unless they took the war to the stars themselves. 1 year after the blockade fell, a human fleet entered Council space. The journey should have been impossible. The distance between Earth and the Council homeworld was measured in thousands of light years. Even with the fastest alien technology, the trip would take decades. But Dr. Yoon had not stopped working after the first victory. She had studied. She had improved. She had built engines that made the Veth designs look like children's toys, engines that were unstable, dangerous, and impossibly fast. 12 ships crossed the void in 6 weeks. And 12 ships that should not exist, crewed by humans who should have been primitives, armed with weapons that should have been impossible. The Council detected them when they entered the outer defense zone. Alarms sounded in every station, every ship, every city on the homeworld. Nothing had ever breached Council space before. Nothing had ever dared. Elder Mora read the sensor report with trembling hands. "How many ships?" she asked. 12, her aide replied. "But Elder, they are followed by more. Hundreds more. Thousands." Mora looked at the display and felt her heart stop. Behind the first 12 ships, a fleet was emerging from fold space. Ship after ship after ship, appearing like stars being born. They were not the crude vessels of the initial counterattack. They were warships, built with purpose and precision. Built for this moment. Humanity had spent 1 year preparing, 1 year of grief and rage and determination, 1 year of every nation working together, every scientist sharing knowledge, every factory producing weapons. And now they had come for answers. The council chamber filled with delegates from every species in the alliance. They came expecting to discuss how to respond to this threat, how to destroy these upstart primitives once and for all. Instead, they found themselves staring at a view screen, watching a young human female in a military uniform. Her name was Park Mira. She was 9 years old when aliens killed her mother, and her father crashed his fighter into an enemy ship. She had grown up in refugee camps, in underground shelters, in resistance cells. She had trained as a pilot like her father. She had risen through the ranks faster than anyone in history. Now she stood on the bridge of the human flagship, wearing her father's old flight jacket over her uniform. Her eyes were cold and hard, shaped by years of war and loss. "You struck our world without warning," she said into the camera. "You burned our cities. You killed our families. 800 million of our people died in your invasion. Men, women, children. You expected us to surrender." The council watched in silence. Some of them remembered voting for the Earth invasion. It had seemed so simple back then, so routine. "We did not surrender," Mira continued. "We adapted. We learned. We built. And now we are here, standing in your space, in ships you thought we could never create, with weapons you thought we could never make." Elder Mora found her voice. "Oh, what do you want? Reparations? Territory? We can negotiate. We can..." "Negotiate?" Mira's voice cut through the air like a blade. "You murdered 800 million of our people. You attacked a world that had never threatened you, never known you existed. You killed my father, you killed my mother, you made millions of children into orphans." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was quiet but carried the weight of a species' fury. "We don't want your territory. We don't want your resources. We don't want your slaves or your tribute or your technology." "Then what do you want?" Mora asked. Mira gestured to someone off camera. The view screen expanded to show the space behind her flagship. The human fleet hung in the void like a storm waiting to break. Thousands of ships. An army that had not existed 2 years ago. "Ma, we built this in 1 year," Mira said. 1 year of grief and rage and determination. Our scientists worked without sleep. Our factories ran without stopping. Our people gave everything they had because they remembered what you did to us." She let that sink in. "Imagine what we will build in 10 years, in 50, in 100. Imagine what we will become when we are no longer fighting for survival, when we are fighting for conquest." The council chamber was absolutely silent. Delegates who had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years sat frozen, unable to speak, unable to move. "This is not an invasion," Mira continued. "We did not come here to destroy you. We came here to deliver a message." She stepped closer to the camera. Her father's jacket rustled with the movement. Her eyes were the eyes of a species that had walked through fire and emerged as something new. "You will never touch our world again. You will never threaten another primitive species again. You will never send another fleet to subjugate another planet that has done nothing to harm you." Her voice rose, filling the chamber. "And if you ever raise arms against humanity again, we will not stop at breaking your fleets. We will not stop at burning your cities. We will hunt down every ship, every station, every colony that carries your flag. We will erase your civilizations from the galaxy the way you tried to erase ours." She smiled. It was the smile of someone who had nothing left to lose. The smile of someone who had already lost everything and survived. "You attacked Earth, and the one species in the galaxy stupid enough, or brave enough, to fight when there was no hope of winning, and we won anyway." She straightened, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the promise of fire. "Do not make us prove that we can do it again." The transmission ended. The council sat in silence for a long time. Delegates looked at each other, searching for words, finding none. The Veth representatives had fled hours ago. Other species were already calculating how quickly they could distance themselves from the invasion decision. Finally, Keeper Illo spoke. His voice was barely a whisper. "What have we awakened?" No one answered. No one could answer. On the human flagship, Admiral Park Mira removed her father's jacket and held it close for a moment. She thought about the recording she had watched 1,000 times, and his calm voice saying goodbye, his fighter flying toward impossible odds. "We did it, Father," she said quietly. "We didn't kneel." Behind her, the human fleet began to turn. They were going home. They had delivered their message. The galaxy had heard. But before she gave the order to leave, Mira looked out the viewport at the council homeworld, a beautiful planet of blue seas and green lands. Billions of people living in cities that had never known war. She could destroy it. Her fleet could burn that world the way their fleet had burned Earth. Part of her wanted to. The part that remembered her mother's screams, her father's final transmission, the years of hiding and fighting and dying. But that was not what humanity was. That was not what her father had died for. "Set course for Earth," she ordered. "We're going home." The fleet jumped to fold space and vanished, leaving the council staring at empty stars. In the crystal halls, the most powerful beings in the galaxy sat in terrified silence, knowing that everything had changed. The universe was no longer theirs alone. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same.